Welcome back, everyone. I'm Julia, your host of the Mentorship podcast, a series that features diverse industry professionals. We mentor you by highlighting different fields and going through our guests' academic and career path, from high school to their current role. In today's episode, we are joined by Adam Liberti, investment advisor at TD. Adam holds a Bachelor of Human Resources Management from York University, as well as a Master of Business Administration from Dalhousie University. In this conversation, we talk about Adam's academic and career path, specifically how Adam has evolved and advanced through various roles at TD. So now, here to mentor you, it is Adam Liberti. Welcome, Adam, to the Mentorship podcast. Thank you so much for being here.
Oh, thanks so much for having me.
Of course. It was so nice meeting you earlier this summer and learning a bit about yourself and your career. We haven't had somebody on the podcast who has done an MBA or has been such a strong representative of the finance field too and business. So I feel like there's so much to learn from you. So I can't wait to get into it. And thank you again. So I'm going to start right from the beginning to really get an understanding of who you are and how everything came to be. So my first question for you is, what did you want to be when you grew up, and what kind of things interested you when you were younger?
Yeah, I think if we go all the way back, there's a picture my parents always share where I was holding a $20 bill and I must have been 6 or 9 months old. And my eyes and insight would just be, tell me more about this, show me more. And so that might have been, a precursor to banking and finance for me. But also both my parents work at the bank.
Oh, okay.
My mom is still with BDC. They're the Business Development Corporation. They work with small businesses, mainly on loan financing. My dad used to work at Scotiabank, but since has moved on. So I think there's a lot of things, and growing up, that could have foreshadowed where I'd end up. Although growing up, I'm very passionate about sports and fitness. At one point, I looked to be like a gym teacher.
Okay.
So in high school, I was in wrestling, football, rugby. In university, I went back to coach some of those teams. And for a short moment at York, I was in kinesiology, going towards those fields. But eventually that passion for business and people and finance took over, and I switched over.
Okay, that's good insight. So yeah, I was happy that you brought up that program change, because there have been many people on the podcast who have changed programs, and, having that time of having to figure out what's best for you, especially after high school. You choose something in high school and you don't really know what it entails, and you don't know all the opportunities that are out there outside of what you have learned about. So it's kind of like that trial and error period. I also went through that. So I'm glad that you brought that up and were able to normalize that. I was wondering if you could kind of talk a little bit more about that experience, even that whole period, maybe in high school, and how you were preparing for university, and then that first year navigating and realizing that kinesiology might not be for you and having to go through that change. What was that period like?
Yeah, for sure. And I can completely relate. I think I was one of the first cohorts where OAC was removed. I'm also born later in the year, in December. So here you are at 16 years old, and you have to choose, well, what am I going to do for the rest of my life? And so it's really hard to pick a major in university. So at the end, I think with my parents' advice, I said, do something that's more open, right? So look at something in economics or business that a little bit more open, and then you can specialize a little bit later once you've had a taste of a few courses and so on. So ended up landing with human resources management, because again, I enjoyed being kind of a mentor and a coach, really love working with people, developing people. So it seemed like a really great fit. So I started in York University, was accepted into the HR program, spent the first year there, but moved into kinesiology my second year. And reason being is, as I went back to high school and worked with my previous gym teachers and coaches, really found that passion to say, well, I love sports, I love teaching, I love coaching. This would be a great fit. And so I switched into kinesiology second year. At that time, kinesiology had two programs. You had a 4-year health program if you wanted to be more on a kinesiologist or on the doctor side, or you had a 3-year more arts, where it would be more for the gym teacher and coaching.
Okay.
When I came in, they actually switched it, so everyone had to do the health side. So you had to do 4 years, it was more involving. And so I thought, it's a lot more schooling to do where I'm looking only maybe at one segment of the field.
Right.
So I switched back to human resources management.
Okay.
The good thing is even though I had switched, because you're allowed quite a few electives, all the kinesiology courses took up my elective courses.
Nice.
So when I went back, it was just HR courses to take. I didn't lose any time, but I didn't have any other electives to take, which was fine because I enjoyed what I learned in those first year kinesiology classes.
Yeah, that's good to hear about just your decision making too and what that was like. I feel like it's really relatable. When I was trying to figure out what program I wanted to stick with, I also was changing universities too. I went from TMU and then I did York for a year as well, and then I went back to TMU. So yeah, I think it's interesting when the decision is you start with something, you change, and then you go back, which both of us, I guess, kind of did in a different way. But it's nice to do that, even though it seems very difficult and stressful in the moment. It's kind of good to go through that test and that practice to see if what your original choice actually was what's most suited for you too.
Yeah, it's really to get that itch or that is out of your mind. Oh, what if, or how would I know? And it's nice to get that knowledge, and it's in your earlier school years or career years. That's the time to do it.
That's exactly what those years are for. And I think when people put so much pressure on themselves, like I shouldn't be changing, I need to stick with it. That's what those years are for. So it's important for people to have that advice too. So let's get into the degree that you ended up pursuing and finishing, which was the Human Resources Management degree at York. And I would love to hear a little bit about what you learned in that program, the courses you were taking, also just the lifestyle in general, if you could touch on that too.
Yeah, for sure. From memory, I switched back into Human Resources Management, and then I followed the guideline that the HRPAO sets out, because after school I was looking at the CHRP designation.
Okay.
And so you end up specializing. I think there's 7 fields. I won't remember them all off by heart, but I remember it's like training development, compensation, labor relations, legality. And so I completed all the courses, and you had to have over a 75 in each to qualify. So luckily, I think there was only one after I was just under, so that was unfortunate, but I made sure I had the qualification to continue. I graduated in 08-09, so it wasn't the best time in the market.
Right.
A pretty tough recession. I was lucky enough the year before to be on contract in HR role at Toronto Hydro, one of the big utility companies.
For an internship?
So I was a student intern, and I was quite lucky because I was one of the only ones that didn't have a family relationship. I was, interviewed a couple people and was able to come in, and it was the training and development team. And after there was a York University strike, so when my term was supposed to end, I actually stayed on as a contract employee for another 6 to 9 months.
Oh, nice.
Phenomenal experience, but they were also impacted by the recession. So they weren't necessarily laying people off, but they had other spots of tenured employees that ended up taking my spot. And so, so I started looking for a job. So I'm graduating soon. I want to work in HR. And it was a tough time. So I'd have a few interviews. I'm with a recruiter. And entry-level positions, they would say, well, unfortunately, you're competing with a 10-year veteran who was unfortunately laid off, and they'll accept the entry-level pay. So after a few, or position was retracted. When the interview, unfortunately, you were one of our top candidates, but we no longer have the position available at the company until a future date. And so I said, well, let me come somewhere where there's growth. And so a couple of friends that I used to serve coffee to, La Paloma, they say, working at TD, it's the land of opportunity. You start out as a customer service representative and go from there. And so interviewed and started as part-time in Brampton. I remember Trinity Commons, 90 Great Lakes Drive in Brampton as a part-time teller. And still passionate about HR, going towards that path. And they said, work towards a management experience. It's great to have the academic background, but you'll need management experience. And so to get there, the next role would be a junior advisor and then to a manager of customer service.
Oh, okay.
But I think when I became a junior advisor, it really re-sparked that passion for investments in finance.
Okay.
And after a few months, I really switched all of my studies to Canadian securities and financial planning. From there, and the rest is history.
Yeah, that gives good insight too on just the kind of environment you were navigating with the recession, and you maybe would have ended up somewhere else if you weren't competing and with those veterans and it wasn't such a difficult market. Yeah. So I also, just kind of going back to the university period, I was wondering, because I actually didn't realize that HR could be a degree at a university level. I do know some people who have gone through that education, but it was always at a college level. That's just been my exposure to it. So it was nice to see that there actually is different types of experiences you could have with it. And I was just wondering if you went through that period where you were deciding if HR as an education would be better at a college level or at a university level. And I was wondering how you decided with the university path for that.
I think from what I remember, college was more, if you really know what you want to be doing, college is great because it gives you a highly specialized education experience in that field, more commonly internship as well near the end of your paradise. So it's easier to kind of land a job with an employer. But if you don't exactly know and you want kind of more broad in horizons, at university was more of the better pick because they, again, electives and they kind of ground you on more a more diverse breadth of knowledge and experience. HR was more passionate about people. So I know my parents know accounting. You're great with math, and something I thought, I know a lot of accountants, it's, working with people all the time. They're not sitting behind the desk all day and punching numbers. So I thought, oh no, it's too much of that, right? So HR was more, you're always working with people in different, again, could be training and developing them, could be working on compensation, could be working in other fields. So that's why I landed with HR.
Right.
But again, I think very transferable skill sets because most roles in companies, management roles and others require that human resources management connection.
Yeah, makes sense. And it seems like at the university level, maybe you were able to bring in more business components too, and how you talked about just having more of a broadened scope as well.
Exactly, because again, pretty confident this is where I want to land, but wasn't, right? So thinking about accounting or whatnot. So thinking about kinesiology. So I think it gives a bit more optionality in the routes that you take.
Okay, that's interesting. And I wanted to hear, I know you're kind of just talking about how it is so transferable, and we will get more into your specific roles at TD too, but I was wondering, especially in the early stages, how you were seeing your HR skills and experience from your education being able to be applied working at TD as a teller, as a manager as well.
I think it's more just knowing the rule, like employee code of conduct and how to lead and morale. And so I could see, again, and I was a lower level employee and I wasn't a manager yet, but I would know a lot more about the strategies and the tactics and kind of the style that they would be using. And I kind of know the background, the theory behind it, maybe they had been taught the same thing, right? So it was nice to kind of know, and also fairness to know what even as simple as breaks are allowed, or a big one actually was vacation pay. So in my previous employer, small shop, they weren't pay vacation pay regularly. And so when I went to them, I had worked there from 13 till, so maybe this is now, 18, 19 years old. And I asked for vacation pay. And it was a very large check. This was a few $1,000s. And so from then on, they changed and they started paying vacation pay on every check.
Oh, wow.
For everyone.
Okay. Yeah. And I feel like people probably see that as an asset too, like having that HR background, even though you weren't working specifically in an HR office or department at TD, there's so much more insight that you can bring and skills as well.
Exactly.
Let's go into a bit of your early stages at TD and just kind of hear about the transitions that you made too, because I think this is a good time to mention you've been there for over 15 years, but you've had so much growth and involvement, at least from what I'm seeing. So I'm excited to hear all about it, because it's interesting. Sometimes if somebody is in a certain organization, they might be just in one role or some similar roles, but I feel like you've had a lot of growth. So I think that's really interesting to be able to showcase that you can stay in one corporation or similar corporations, but still be able to have that diverse experience. So I would love to hear about your early stages when you were a teller and then you moved on to advisor and then manager, what those kind of experiences were like, and then we'll get into kind of what came after that.
Yeah, for sure. I think as a teller, you often start part-time. So I remember there, it was a part-time teller. I was still working my previous job at La Paloma part-time. So barista, I was a manager there as well, so with food and everything. I was also reffing soccer games. It was a nice experience and paid well for short times. And I was setting up home theater systems for people on a kind of little side business. Until I think it really opens up when you become a junior advisor, is often the next step for someone starting at the bank, because there you start meeting a lot more people. The partners you work with, the managers of different business lines, your managers, you're again more full-time. And that's where I think it led, a lot of career development conversations to see what's next. And that can often change. But what they're good about is saying, okay, think, well, it may be hard, but now think 5-10 years down the road. What's your end goal? And the reason to that is, I can go to auto finance. I can do underwriting for credit. I can do mortgage loan. I can do investments loan. I can be a manager. I can be help with estates. There's just so much. It could be overwhelming. And so how do you decide what's next? It's good to know, let's say, okay, I want to be in HR, and then backtrack. So if I want to be a vice president of HR one day, what are the 10 steps to get there from where I am now as a junior? Right. And it helps map out, okay, so I have to do junior advisor first to get to manager of customer service, to then maybe break into HR as an assistant or associate, to then maybe be an analyst, and you kind of go from there.
Okay.
And not to say everyone has a linear path, but what you're looking for is that next role going to give me the skill sets that'll help me on the next path in my route to get to my end goal.
Yeah, looking ahead.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I think that always helped, that roadmap. But again, it doesn't have to be set in stone. So even though from junior advisor I became a senior advisor instead of maybe doing manager customer service, it wouldn't take me away from HR. But then my end goal changed to say, well, now it was maybe I want to be a district vice president. Would be the end goal. And then now you become an assistant manager, become a branch manager, corporate roles. And so it continued to change.
Can you talk a little bit about what an advisor position entails, just for people who are interested in general?
Yeah, it's changed a bit. Now it's more specialized, so they'll really separate, a junior advisor will kind of do more day-to-day checking accounts, visas, smaller lines of credit. And then a more senior advisor will handle investments, mortgages, home equity lines. When I was a junior, it was very much the same. And so the junior, you had to learn everything on the investment side, mortgage side, purchases. So, which is tough because you're coming in and maybe 21 years old and doing everything. But with time and experience, it was a great learning ground. Yeah. And I think that's what helped to say, okay, well, now I really know what I want to do next, because I'm getting a lot of experience and exposure in this role.
It seems like there might be a lot of mentorship or a support in that way within TD, where you're able to have open conversations about where you want to be in 10 or 15 years. So I was wondering if you can kind of touch on that support system and how you've been able to have mentors to help you get to where you need to be. And for people who are listening who want to be able to grow through their career too, but don't know how to ask the questions or figure out what's available to them. How did you do that kind of at that time as you were planning ahead and figuring out those next steps?
I think what's really is they do have a very formal structure with quarterly check-ins on performance, but also an annual career development plan, and that you'll continue to touch on at your quarterly checkpoints. And then what's great is I find management is very, usually more networked and know more people than you. So they'll say, okay, if it's, HR or investments, here's somebody I know really well that you should talk to. Just kind of have a coffee chat, get some further insights, talk about your roadmap and sort of how would you be a top candidate for the next role you're looking for on your journey. And, been lucky, some great mentors, both formally and informally at TD, great management that would be very supportive and say, their own development to make sure that you're doing well in your role, continue to grow, but then become ready for that next role in your career journey.
Yeah, I think that's so important. I think sometimes it can be intimidating for people to branch out and ask those questions, or they don't realize that that's something that is available to them. So just knowing that you can kind of step outside of your comfort zone and talk to people and see what's out there, even if you don't want to pursue that, it's also good to just hear the options to validate what the path that you're already on too. So that's always good to know that they have that kind of support system too.
Yeah, I think it's huge for that to break that barrier, right? So if it might be, a colleague or a manager introducing you to that senior leader or executive, which you would be comfortable saying, hey, I'd love to learn more about your world, what you do, what you're looking for. So it's so nice to have kind of that warm introduction, and then many of which have been happy to share.
Yeah, that's great. As we've been talking about your work with TD, I was wondering as well if in these kind of positions, if you're able to branch out and do any type of external collaborations while also being part of one corporation for an extended period of time.
The first one I recall was with when I was a branch manager at one of their flagship branches in Pine Valley in 7. My vice president come to me and said, there's this unique opportunity. You've been selected because we're passionate with tech and you're working smart and utilizing the gadgets we provide firstly. So he had come and said the digital team is going out to see Apple in California for a week. They have all their tech people, IT, the strategy team, but they need a few end users to come and support and build the strategy on, if you were a branch manager and you had an app at your disposal, what would it the information need to have and what would it need to do to be effective? Such a cool experience to see how a software company that builds something, right? And this is Apple, this is the best in the world. And then even after that week when we came back, we were involved in kind of regular meetings to say, okay, we're trying to build a minimum valuable product to say, we want to get this out there, the entire kind of thousands of branch managers using it, and then take feedback to continue to evolve it throughout. And so it was nice to see the external process, the tech and digital side, and the corporate side of how something gets done from financing and structure and strategy.
That's awesome.
To full execution.
That's really awesome to have these different kind of experiences outside of the branch as well.
Yeah.
So I would love to hear about when you started thinking about pursuing an MBA and why you maybe felt like that was important and where it would lead you. What was that period like for you?
Yeah, so now that's where, again, you think university, you're joining, you're younger, you don't know what you do, so you try, it was HR, it was kinesiology. And so now, I've been in my career for almost a decade, manager, my route, so I'm looking to become an executive, both as a district leader, but maybe potentially on the corporate side in different lines of business. And so what I was lacking was corporate experience. And so this was a great way to get that strategic mindset and experience through education first. So then if I'm going to start at a higher level on the corporate side, I would have a lot of backing behind me. And so since I knew too that, okay, I'm going to pursue a long-term career in investments and finance and banking, I would take a specialized MBA in that field with Dalhousie.
Was that something that was recommended to you by maybe one of your superiors or peers, or that was something that you looked into on your own and felt like this is something you wanted to do for your own personal growth?
I think that's something that came up in those career development conversations. Okay. So now you're closer to your end goal, and these are the it takes more to get there, and so these are the things that you would have to do. And then you started looking. I think I went to a couple seminars where different universities would come and support. So there's some really Bocconi in Italy, others in California. I looked at Shula because I've been at York. But I think just for me, it was the balance of, it was hybrid. And so you would, a lot of it online. And then you would have an intensive after the 3-month course in Toronto, 8 to 5, 4 days, final exam on the 5th day. And you'd be out in Halifax for the summer.
Okay.
And so it was both, Dalhousie has been around for 200 years. Many of the executives, both at TD and really most of my classmates were from the banks or the army or insurance companies. So you had the networking piece. You had that balance of distance. I had just had my first. I kept delaying it, and the best advice was that it's only going to get worse. You don't want to, have to do things on the weekend when your kids are starting sports. And I think just the balance, the history behind it, and then the knowing that others who had taken it that really strongly advocated for it. So
I was going to ask you about kind of the lifestyle being at Dalhousie, but I guess that kind of gives context on just how your time was divided with the locations and everything. But if you can give a bit more of a deeper insight into the MBA program and what you were learning. I think for me, because I'm more on the science side, I hear so much about an MBA, but I don't really know what it entails and what you're learning. So
I think similar to university on a higher level and more specialized. So if I remember some of the courses there were, it covers a lot of the fields, even see outside the banking and finance industry. So there was a course in international business, economics, marketing, legal, ethics, corporate ethics. And with each course, the professor you had was, researcher, very experienced in their field, and would really kind of open up your mind and get you to think abstractly, but then hone it all in strategic. Because in each one, I think we really had to would have homework assignments, but a lot were business cases, right? So you're building a business case, and these are the stakes that you need to look at and the risk factors. And if this company's coming to you with this issue, how would you resolve it?
Right.
And they were pulling from, they were redacted information that shouldn't be public, but it was coming from all really true cases. And so by the end, you can come to a problem with everything you've learned in each field to come to a really confident solution.
And what about the lifestyle at Dalhousie? Even though you were only there for the summer, it seemed like in short periods of time, you are our first Dalhousie alum. So It would be nice to hear also a little bit about the campus. I actually did a summer program in Nova Scotia, but it was at a different university. It was more like a rural area all the way on one of the coasts. And it was a really interesting experience being in Nova Scotia coming from Toronto. So what was that like for you?
I mean, what's interesting is I chose to, since I never went away for school here, as York was local and I drove in, I would stay at their dorm for that week. And so I had the true kind of university experience here at, in my mid to late 20s. But it was a lot of fun because, again, the group, and that's what they say, sometimes distance MBAs, you don't get the networking, you don't build relationships with what you do, but you do, because a lot of the people that take one course with you follow your path.
Right.
And so you see them in the Toronto intensive, even though they might live in Vancouver. And you see them in the Halifax one as well. So you do build some strong relationships and become more like teenagers again. So we would have our class, we'd do our homework, but then out the nightlife, you're right by the water.
Yeah.
So if you want to go on a quick boat ride or you want to have a nice dinner and phenomenal fish restaurants as well, right there on the harbor. And then they also had an underground pub, live music. And so it was a really nice experience to say, I'm a little bit older, but had a really nice time, both balancing kind of work, but also leisure.
Yeah.
Leisure at night. Yeah.
And it seems like a program that would bring in people from different stages in their life. Like you might be right out of undergrad or you might be further into your career too. And also, were you still working at TD at the time and balancing both?
Yeah, full time. And that's where, I have a mortgage and now I have my first child.
Yeah.
It would be impossible to complete it. And you're paying for the MBA. It would be impossible to complete. So that's where that balance of, okay, I can do this because I can still keep my full-time job.
Yeah.
But it was also structured. You can do 2 courses per semester if you'd like. I think that's too much. Yeah. I was doing 1 at a time. Some would take summer off. I know some that took up to 7 years to complete it.
Oh, wow.
So you can really balance it towards your life. But I would say with some course per semester, I was able to balance a couple hours per week, a little bit more on the weekend, and still, be out for social activities, be there for my family.
Yeah.
Sometimes a little crunch time or stressful, but it was a decent balance.
Interesting. Okay. How long did it end up taking you then to complete?
3 years.
Okay.
3 years. Yeah.
And I think that's normal in general for grad school anyways. Like masters for science programs could be 3 years. So I think that's great that you were able to still balance everything that you needed to at the same time. So once you finished the MBA program, what were your plans then, especially with the steps that you wanted to take at TD? What were you now positioning yourself to be in?
Yeah, so now as I've kind of climbed the ladder and it was at much higher job level, I was managing one of the flagship branches. It was kind of either now is really the time to make a move more into a corporate strategy-based role, or I decided to end up more senior leadership. And what was different is really taking me out of my comfort zone it's outside of the retail world, which I've grown up in for a decade at TD, in the wealth side. So require more licensing, require a deep learning curve, would be more remote management, which is very different from being in a senior team every day. You have to manage, 20 to 25 people that sit at 15 different locations. And so it comes with a whole new learning and structure. And so I became a senior regional manager of financial planning. By that time, I'd already had my CFP and a couple of accreditations and knew I had a passion for investment. So it seemed like a great fit.
So you are out of the branch now working more in a corporate setting.
It's, I would say, corporate TD Wealth, but still management, very much tied to retail because a lot of our referrals for new clients would come from retail and my financial planners would sit in with branches for the most part.
From that period, because you still kind of went through some different roles after that as well, can you talk about those transitions too and what those roles entailed? Yeah,
I think here was the, other than being an executive, this would be the highest level of management you can have. And this role was now my longest role, I think also because of COVID. So COVID happened about halfway through. That delayed a lot of things for a lot of people, but also gave more time to reflect. And so not that I had avoided, but in reflection, I thought, I think I'd be good at some corporate roles and could bring in some ideas and can bring them through to fruition. And obviously I would grow and learn in that side. But I really thought, I miss working with clients directly. But it had been a decade. And so a nice opportunity came up at King and Bader Downtown Center. So really the core, the original private banking center, the clientele, the network, the partners that you work with was kind of the highest net worth and the most complex. And so I'd interviewed, went really well, and made that transition in the summer of 2021. And I get nervous at first to say, well, this really changes my whole map and route for all this time. I had been to one thing and I'm making a big shift. But luckily, it took a bit of learning and memory to jog my memory again, because it's been a while since I've been an advisor or speaking to clients directly. But I'd say give it 3 to 6 months and it went really, really well, really quickly. And I soon forgot to say, okay, no, I'm not giving up. I know this is what I want to do. Common sports analogy I give is my life was much like Sheldon Keefe, which is great. But here I am now like Austin Matthews. I'm doing really well. I'm having fun. I'm still mentoring others and they take great care of me. So I was really happy and continued there for about 3 years before realizing, I know this is what I want to do. I'm more passionate about the investment side. I have all my licenses to be a chartered investment manager, a financial planner. I was working towards others. And that's what I find. You say if you specialize in mortgage, you be more mortgage specialist on that side, or you're an investment advisor. And so spoke to my manager after a few years and was very understood, was very sad to lose me, but very supportive on looking to make that transition. And again, would get me in front of different managers, both in Toronto or closer to home. And I think too, in this, it's hard to start off on your own. So what I was looking for was a team to say, listen, I have a network I've built at TD and outside for many, many years. I have clients that have followed me, clients I've built relationships with here in my private banker role. But I want to be confident from day one I can come to them with strategies and models and portfolios and investment management that has a track record, where it would take years and years for me to get to that same level. And looking for the team on their side to say, we need, we've grown, we need somebody to kind of help us with our capacity. And so after about almost a year of conversations, I joined Paul and Don earlier this year.
Okay, as an investment
advisor and soon to be associate portfolio manager in the next little bit. Yeah.
And you were kind of earlier on as an advisor working with clients versus now as a senior banker and then investment advisor, the type of clients that you're working with. Can you talk about the difference there and the lifestyle and how it's different as well?
So I'd say with advisor, both at the branch and even senior private banker to an extent, you're more you do a little bit of everything. And so you're kind of that quarterback to say, okay, so I will own your day-to-day banking, your simple credit needs, your more complex credit needs. But when it comes to anything more specialized with investments, more specialized with credit, more specialized with planning, I would refer off to a specialist. And then even with an advisor in a branch, the same, but to a lesser extent, because you're serving a lot of walk-in clients. So you might have thousands of clients that you work with,
right.
And anybody can walk in and become your client. And so you don't have the time or capacity to really build a very deep relationship with many families. Private banking was more of a household model to say, okay, we're signing up for private banking. There's a lot of services and product benefits that you receive, along with a dedicated relationship to say, I will only ever work with about 300 families, and this is what I provided. So it'll be a long-term relationship.
You were able to kind of narrow down that you want your network, even with your clients, to be a bit more intimate and to be more...
Exactly. And now that's where even more highly specialized in our segment of private investment advice at TD, we have open architecture. So consider us your dedicated portfolio manager. But then again, we kind of have a family office style setup. So we have a high net worth planner. We have a tax specialist. We have a business succession planner for those that are looking to coming to selling or buying a business. We have a trust officer when it comes to will and estate planning for legacy needs down the road. And even again, for my time at TD, I built up a network where for mortgages, mortgage specialists, for home and auto insurance. So I kind of still like to be that quarterback to say part of my value is, yes, my main bread and butter is investment management with my team, but anything you need from finance in the banking world, I will be that liaison and ensure you have this very seamless and sound client experience.
Yeah, especially with all of your experience too. you can kind of, I feel like, assist on so many different aspects.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And I was just wondering too, so now where you are, is it in a like TD corporate office, or it's specifically in kind of your own office with this team that you're working with now?
I mean, we have an office. Our office is beside Mel Lastman Square in the North York Center at 5140 Yonge Street, but really mobile. And so I'll find myself, I support a couple branches in North York, Richmond Hill, and Vaughan as well. They're looking to bring me more into Vaughan based on my background and Italian language speaking skills. But I'll have often referrals and clients from Toronto, my time in Toronto, my time in Vaughan, sometimes even up in Muskoka. And very mobile, so I'm trying to meet them, but often throughout the year too, if there's calls or virtual, they're open to that as well. So that kind of has opened up mobility because that capability and the comfort that people have. There's actually one that we're meeting for the first time, and they're in BC. They're in between BC and Toronto, but we're meeting them virtually in BC shortly, and then we'll meet them in person in a couple months.
Okay, that gives a good idea too, just on your like day-to-day routine and the lifestyle. This brings me to my last question then, which is, what are your hopes for your future career development, and what do you hope to achieve?
Yeah, I think now, after such a long journey, I think it would say about 11 roles and 15 years at TD, this is my final chapter, and it's built that way to really grow and have long-lasting relations with families, multiple generations, and just really seeing their hopes and dreams being fulfilled, and financing is a part of that, whether it be their businesses and their kids coming to prosper, graduations and marriages and kids. And so I think, again, right back from why coming into HR is just seeing the development and maximum potential of people, and being a part of that, really helping give people that ease, give people that plan so that they can live comfortably and live happily. And really growing to do that for as many people as possible.
It's been so great hearing about your path and how you've been able to grow and evolve, but also have points where you took some turns and changed your perspective and changed your path, tried different things and went back to things or brought in your skills with HR, for example. So it's been so nice to see and hear about your path. I think that it fosters so much inspiration for people and really gives them an understanding of what opportunities are available to them.
Yeah, and that's what I'd say. You could sometimes think, even myself, I should have done this a lot earlier if I knew. But then I think everything along my path, the experience I had, the connections I made, the client relationship managing and being a manager really does help to do this now. And again, what I found, like, it's such a great fit with the partners and the team that I have now. Would that have happened?
Yeah.
And so it's not an effective use of time, I find. So it's, I'm behind and just go forward, and had everything happen the way it did, and I'm looking forward to the future.
Yeah, for sure. And believing in yourself too is really not doubting yourself in that way of, should I have done it differently? Like, maybe you could have done something differently, but believing in yourself is where that confidence and that prosperity is going to come from at the end of the day.
And that feeling of, doing what you love, you feel it, right?
Yes.
So if it doesn't feel, it truly is, if it doesn't feel like work majority of the time, then it's really what you should be doing.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Adam, for coming on the podcast and telling us all about your journey and speaking with us today. I really appreciate it, and I hope that our audience finds just as much insight and inspiration as I did. So thank you.
Yeah, no, happy to be here. Thank you so much for having me. This was great, and hopefully helpful for everyone out there.
Thank you so much to Adam for coming on the Mentorship podcast. This was a fantastic conversation about how to grow and build a successful career within a specific industry. Adam's journey serves as a powerful reminder that dedication and adaptability can open doors to incredible opportunities. We will be back in 2 weeks with our next episode, where we will be joined by a radio producer, so be sure to tune in. In the meantime, follow us on @MentProjects on all social media platforms for updates and more mentorship resources. Thank you so much for listening.